Welcome back to I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence, Inc. I'm your co host, Michelle, and today we're diving into a very important and often overlooked topic: the cultural perspectives on domestic violence. How do different cultures view and address domestic violence? And what unique challenges do survivors face within these cultural contexts?
That's right, Michelle. Domestic violence affects people across all walks of life, but cultural norms, beliefs, and values can greatly shape how it is perceived and responded to. In today's episode, we'll be hearing from survivors, cultural experts, and advocates who will help us understand how cultural backgrounds influence both the challenges and the solutions when it comes to domestic violence.
We'll also explore the implications for survivors and discuss ways to build more culturally sensitive support systems. Whether you're a survivor, a supporter, or someone who works in this space, today's conversation will help us see domestic violence through a broader lens, helping us build stronger, more inclusive communities of healing.
Exactly. Let's get started. And thank you for being part of this important conversation.
Welcome, Kiara, to I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence, Inc. How are you this evening?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. So we're excited to hear about what you do for a living, and we're talking about, cultural beliefs and differences in domestic violence tonight. So we can't wait to get your input.
I'm
I
excited
just
to
want to
be
jump in quick and say hello and welcome to I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence, Inc. I'm the founder. And a little birdie told me that you live in Summerlin. And we're like, wow, what a beautiful location there in Vegas. And I just want to say I'm jealous.
here. Thank you for having me, Sean.
Yeah, yeah.
Summerlin is gorgeous. I love it here.
Yeah, I'm in Henderson, so it's beautiful here. So, well, let's get going, Michelle, with the questions and get right at it.
Well,
Okay.
first, Kiara, tell us about yourself and what you do and why, domestic violence awareness is so important to you.
Well, I'm a registered nurse, and I have a background in mental health. I've been in healthcare for over 10 years. And I mean, as you can imagine, I've seen a whole lot of trauma related to domestic violence, a lot of mental health, mental illnesses, substance abuse, and, things like that, people tend to turn to or to help cope with domestic violence.
Mhm.
So currently, I'm a case manager in the Las Vegas area as a registered nurse. And the reason why I got into domestic violence awareness and why I became a community advocate is because I grew up seeing my mom go through domestic violence, as early as I can remember. And it didn't really start with her, it's a generational thing. So, like, four generations of women in my family on my mom's side, including myself, have, been a victim of domestic violence. But, I want to break that generational curse, by way of educating myself. And I have kids, I have a daughter. And the best way that I can do that is not only to educate myself, but also to lead by example. So I left my abusive situation last year, so after 13 years of dealing with it in a variety of different forms, emotional, mental, physical, and I put my foot down and yeah, that's over. I know my worth. I
Congratulations.
deserve better than that.
Well,
Thank you.
Congratulations, Kiara, because you have to be brave and you have to have tenacity and you have to look at your life and say, I'm better than this and I
Mhm.
can do better than this. But it's hard to break because sometimes you're still in love and there's past times that weren't always bad, but the times that were bad outweighed obviously the good. So you had to just take charge and you got kids, right?
Yes, I have
Yeah,
to.
there you go. I mean, you don't want the kids growing up with that. So I just want
Mhm.
to say, I feel you. I feel your pain, and I'm proud of you. And thank you for taking the step. And I'm sure audiences will reflect and look at you as an example after you tell
Yeah.
your story on our show. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
well, congratulations, one, on getting out. And let's get right into these questions.
Okay.
All right. So, how do cultural beliefs and norms influence the way domestic violence is perceived and addressed in different communities?
Thank you for asking that question. It's actually a really good question. So I am a Southern girl. I'm from Louisiana, and one of the things that I can remember being taught in my household is what happens in this house stays in this house.
Hmm.
It's a code that we lived by, and there were repercussions if we didn't, right?
Wow.
And I can recall being sexually assaulted at 9, 10 years old by my mom's husband. And we went to like this very like prominent, prestigious church. So, trying to tell my mom what was going on. And nobody believed because her husband held a certain level of a certain position in the church, so nobody really believed that he would do that. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna take my chances and I'm gonna reach out to someone in the church, someone that I know loves me, someone that I know would like listen to me. And when I did, and I just knew she was gonna help me, and she told my mom that I was spreading our family's business, and I was punished. And I knew like from a very young age that I'd already seen my mom go through domestic violence. I'm now being assaulted in my home where I should feel safe. I feel trapped where I have nowhere to turn. And it's like your job is to be quiet, not to say anything because you don't want to bring shame to your family or shame to the church.
Yeah.
So deal with it and pray about it. God is going to help you. It's going to be okay. And so culture, to speak on culture, I was taught at a very young age to be quiet, to keep my business to myself, to withdraw, and thankfully I had music as an outlet. I learned how to play the guitar and that helped me, but I knew from a very young age that this is not the life that I want for myself. And then also in other cultures, as a registered nurse, seeing other patients, where they're not allowed to speak, or speak for themselves. Their partner is hovering and very present. In some cultures, women are seen and not heard. You
Yeah.
know, and how dare you betray your family, your husband, or you know what I mean? And also in other instances, I've seen, and this is in my situation,
Hmm.
where I've reached out to close family members and friends to let them know what I was going through. And it was more like, what did you do to push him
Wow.
to that point? Or I know him, I've been knowing him forever. He would never do that. He worships the ground you walk on. Everybody knows he loves you. I'm like, nobody's listening to me. you
Yeah.
know. So it's almost like um deal with your problems. You know, you keep whatever happens in your house stays in your house. It's I would say that that's part of the one of the things that has been taught and carried on all throughout my life because I was conditioned to keep quiet, you know.
I'm
So
sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. And I have seen that with, friends, and, where like it would be different for me,
Right.
we like to speak
Yes.
out, we're Italian, so we talk.
Yeah.
It's definitely sad, and then when they put like the blame game on you, like that was horrible. I'm glad you had.
Yeah. How dare you weaponize my trauma against me as if I'm the
Yeah, it's
problem?
bad. Pierre, I want to say that something that resonates with me is and I want to really bring this up for a moment, is that when you said what stays in this house stays in this house. So I grew up in a white Roman Catholic, family, and my father was a police officer. My mother was an executive, and we had a pretty good income, pretty good life. And in our neighborhoods, like our house was normal, like it was really normal. But like I'd see like people running out of the house, the husband like beating the wife, and my father being a cop would run over there, and I used to see it. Like it was really bad,
Mhm.
and they were like members of the, the church and stuff, and he'd put the fire out, calm him down, and the police would come, and because they knew my father did let them go back in the house, but he'd separate them. Sometimes we actually had people over our house, that were intoxicated that slept in the couch because my father was that guy. He didn't want them to go to jail, and he said either leave the house, come to my house. So he was that guy. He was actually doing domestic violence kind of advocate work back
Mhm.
then, and that's what made me 12, actually 9. I've been doing this for about 19 years off the record, but I recently started the 501c3 because I was using my own money, and people say you can do a 501c and it'll be a nonprofit, it'd be better for you, So I said, well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll look at that. So my point is, I remember as about must have been about 12, he was hitting her across the face, and he said to her, like, this is where my father was running at him to stop him from hitting her, like full backhanders, right? The poor woman was tiny. He was well over 6 feet. He was heavy, big guy. And he was a janitor at the school where I went to school. It was just horrific. And because we loved him, Mr. Evans, but he passed and he's been gone for a while now. But he was like someone we looked up to, and then we really felt bad. But he was hitting her, and he was saying, what happens in this house stays in this house, and repeatedly. So when you said that, I'm like, oh my God, it's just like I'm having PTSD, mild
Yeah.
PTSD from watching that as a child, because I was crying. My brother was like crying, like, why is Steve? Because we knew the wife, and she'd come over for birthday parties, but the kids we were all friends. We went to pool together. To see that. And then as I grew up, I saw more of it. And I said, I'm going to become a police officer, because I did become a federal police officer. I was at the feds for a long time. I became a forensic
Mhm.
investigator, and then I became a prosecutor. And then, went in the private sector and was an investigator. So I felt compelled that I have to keep going and bring some type of awareness. And there's one way to do it, and it's media. So your story that you're telling, I just want to say I really, truly appreciate you. And I want to say I'm very proud of you having the tenacity to come out here and tell your story. And it tells me that you're there, because the first thing you said is, you're wondering when you can get a copy of it. And of course, you get a copy once it's released, and will be, I believe, will be airing, I think, the 7th. It'll come in. So that's because Michelle is great. She's the one that's kind of like the guru, saying it nicely. But I just want to say again, proud of you, and you are gonna, like, your story. I don't even know what you're gonna say, but I just know it's gonna touch thousands of people. And people like you are needed, because a lot of people just keep it sweeping it underneath the welcome mat, and they won't face it. They won't come out, but you got to come out because you're going to save people's lives.
Right.
Before they wake up and they're 45 and they've got arthritis and bones that were broken, and he leaves, right, or she leaves. It could be he or her, right, and they're left with nothing and no income. Left disheveled. Is terrible. And again, thank you. So we can continue.
Thank you for doing this though, especially like as a male, and someone that had, you have your own introspection on, domestic violence and bringing awareness and stuff. So thank you for even having this platform.
Yeah, and the thing is, I chose Michelle as my partner, as a co-host, because she's a survivor herself. She has a story, and I'm a survivor myself. I almost was killed. We both were almost killed, and I don't talk of it much because they say if you talk of it a lot, you're empowering it, and it actually can help if you have mild PTSD, which I had very serious PTSD, and I still see a therapist for the PTSD. And the incident happened a long time ago. So I'm just saying that, I'm a former law enforcement, a big guy, and it doesn't matter. Like, things can happen to anyone. A perfect example that you'd say, well, men never experience it. Well, as a rule, yes, it's true. It's 70-30 kind of the ratio of the abuse. 70% men abuse women, and men get abused by women about 24 to 30%. So yes, it's kind of like you never hear from a man, but I didn't do this because I'm a man. I did this because I want to bring awareness. I want to wake people
Yeah.
up that you don't have to live like this. Don't live like this. There's resources. Reach out to our foundations. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. We're in Las Vegas, Nevada. Our website's I am a survivor of domestic violence.org, and our hotline is 702-323-4477. Again, 702-323-4477. So I wanted to do a little shout out, and let's get back to answering these questions.
Well, I just want to say real quick, jump back on the generational thing that you brought up. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, you grew up in it. I grew up in it. A lot of us grew up seeing it. And some of us with kids, like for instance, when I was going through it, I didn't realize that it was affecting my kids because I was like, oh, it's just happening to me. So it's not going to happen to my kids. But then you see, like, now that they're grown and they're in relationships or they've been in relationships, it did affect them, like
Yeah.
whether it was like some type of emotional trauma or like scared PTSD from seeing me, like, can you just touch a little more on like how the generational, affected you or how you see it affect your patients?
Oh, for sure. So one thing I learned while studying nursing is that trauma is transmitted through DNA prior to conception. So
Really?
that tells me that we hold it in our wombs,
Yeah.
right? As women. And it passes down, and it takes well, first of all, the change begins with the mindset. And I wrote a book, and I talk about that in the book. About how it shifts. It's the first step to um to breaking that generational curse is understanding and acknowledging that it's happening and what's actually going on, and knowing that you have to shift your mindset, and that in itself is the first step. It's powerful. But then after that, some people don't know where to turn. Like, I didn't know where to turn, what to do, and I had seen my mom stay in that environment 7 years, and even though she wasn't going through, like, after she had left her first abusive boyfriend, she married a guy who was abusive in every other way besides physical. So, and she would say that, it's not, it's not, you can't leave your marriage unless it's adultery. You don't, it doesn't have to be any other, any other thing can be worked out in the name of God, right? And that's a problem. So I personally believe that, you break that generational curse, that generational cycle by, it's almost like an awakening. It's a mindset shift. The light bulb goes off, and you make the decision like, I'm not living like this anymore. So,
Yeah.
so what's next? Like, okay, you make the decision, now what? And I knew for me that I didn't want that for my children. And I was aware that my kids would be affected by it. I was aware of that because as soon as I decided I was going to leave their dad, I put them into therapy, and we had a program in Louisiana, and it was play therapy, for my children. And so play therapy, a lot of people don't know what that is. I talk
No.
about that in my book as well. So play therapy is a form of therapy where the therapist meets the child where they are, and they basically condition them. They put them like they help them like express their trauma through play. So one of the things that my daughter's therapist did with her, she was old. She was like 4 years old at the time, so she understood that something was wrong and there was a problem.
Mhm.
So the way that she was able to express her therapy, so the her therapist would create different scenarios, and they would play in sand. And my daughter would make different things in the sand, and then they would also use like Play-Doh. So she would basically paint a scenario and ask her certain questions, and she would just spit out exactly how she felt, what she saw, how she knew that it was wrong, and it helped her to like process that at her level, at the tender age of 4.
Wow.
So, but saying that I was going to break the generational curse, I understood that it required sacrifice of the person that I was before. That
Yes.
old person had to die, and I had to make peace with not being the same person that I was before. And understanding that, like I said before, it starts with the mind. I'm not tolerating this behavior anymore. I don't care who finds out. It's embarrassing. Who wants to be a victim and to have that label on them? You feel guilty because what did I do? How did I end up in this situation? I knew that I didn't want to go through this. I knew that I wanted something different from my life. And,
Mhm.
by golly, I made that decision to be with this person and saw all the red flags, but
Mhm.
it was normal because it's all that I had seen. I hadn't seen
Yeah.
anything different.
Yeah.
It was familiar. So it was attractive, you know?
Yeah.
So, and even in my patients, a lot of them are scared that they don't have anybody else to turn to. I don't want to put my kids in a situation where they're uncomfortable. And as parents, you know, we'll do anything for our kids. We'll take and shoulder anything, to make sure that our kids are okay. We'll stand in a toxic environment if that means that my children is going to have shelter, they're going to have food, and they won't have to worry about anything. And I'll be the guinea pig. I'll be the person to be abused if it's worth it for my children.
Yeah.
Not realizing that it has the reverse effect. you know
Right.
so the book that I wrote, it talks about a mindset shift, and I came up with SMART goals, and the acronym SMART, on ways to the steps that it takes to leave an abusive situation and to thrive.
That's a
Awesome.
great answer. Before
Yeah.
one gets into the next question, what is the name of your book and where can we find it?
So
Yeah.
it'll be out pretty soon, in the next couple months. In March is the
Nice.
tentative date. It's called Empower You.
Nice.
Um, the the biggest secret to your next level life.
Congrats.
Wow.
Can't wait to see
That's
it.
epic. One thing I was going to say is you kind of resonated when you said what you said, and it's about, afterwards what you do during it and making the decision to change and great things come. But one of our slogans is beyond the survive, we thrive.
I love
Beyond the
that.
survive, we thrive.
Yes.
Okay, let's get into the next question. Here we go. Okay. What impact does stigma or shame surrounding domestic violence have on survivors seeking help within specific cultural contexts? So let me repeat it again for you. I'll read it slow. What impact does stigma or shame surrounding domestic violence have on survivors seeking help with specific cultural contexts?
Well, it's a huge impact. As I said before, women are to be seen and not heard in certain cultures. You know, um, Obviously, I'm an African American woman, and in my experience, not only in my personal life and my family, but also with my patients, it's um, there's a level of scrutiny, that comes with being in a situation that's abusive and you wanting to speak out to actually get help. So a little bit of backstory about what I went through. I'm the oldest of 12,
Oh,
right?
boy.
And
Wow. Wow.
I'm my parents' firstborn child. So both of my parents, I'm their firstborn child. And um I felt like the pressure to lead by example, like, yes, mommy and daddy, but I'm the big sister. So what do I do with my life to be a better example for all of my siblings coming after me? And not just them, people that know me, right? I want to, when you hear Kiara, I want people to think good things, right? So with me applying, like putting that pressure on myself and knowing that I walked away from the church that I was involved in, and the sacrifice that came with that. So basically, when I decided to leave, I lost my entire family because the rule is if you're backslidden, which means if you leave the church, you're ostracized, you're shunned, right? So it's just me and my abuser at this time. I was 18 years old. I'd grown up in the church all my life. I knew nothing. I knew what my mom showed me, which was everything surrounding the church. And I knew what my abuser, was showing me. I was so green and very impressionable and very naive. So when I told him the things that I had been through and how, like I needed to get away from that environment, that situation, and that culture, right? That it was a cultural mindset with thinking that, you can, in the name of God, everything's going to be okay, but it's not realistic if you're not putting any action behind it, right? And certain situations aren't justified just because they're a member of the church. It's a problem, right? So, but he took that and used that to his advantage. So, I ended up in a whole situation where I'm stuck and trapped, and now I have kids I brought into this situation, and I just knew that I had to get my life together. I knew that I had to change my life. So I felt like because he wasn't allowing me to go to work, the way that I would change my life is to go to school. So I had to outsmart him in a different way to where he still felt empowered because I was dependent on him financially, but all the money that he would give me, I saved it. I put it away to make sure, I could work on my exit strategy. And even though I wasn't strong enough or even mentally stable enough to make that actual move to act on it, I knew that I had to work towards it. And one day I was at a Lauryn Hill concert with him, and I get super emotional thinking about it because I remember that day I made the decision that my life was going to change. I was no longer going to live like this. And she began playing her song X Factor, where the words are, "It could all be so simple, but you'd rather make it hard. And loving you is a battle." That's not love. And I'm miserable. I hate my life. Like, this is not okay. Like, how did I end up here? You know? And while I'm at the concert, I'm crying, and I had a whole moment and people around me are singing, and I'm like, I don't care where I'm at, what's going on. I have got to change my life. So I sat down and I started Googling adult survivor groups because I knew that I was still being affected by the trauma of my sexual abuse. and my now physical abuse, and in the same situation that my mom was in, with my children and trying to get out and trying to fight to get through nursing school. And every time I have an exam, he's going to sabotage it, and try to, start a fight and everything. And, I found a program, and, I started the program. I started, the healing process. That's when my healing journey began, and it's almost like I began to change and my mindset began to shift. But he was still there. He was still hovering. And one of the most pivotal moment in my life was the day that, like, the very last day, while I was still in school whenever he got arrested. So I'm trying to go and study with one of my colleagues, and he's like, "You ain't going nowhere." And I'm like, "But I have to study. You know that there's a test. This is going to change our lives. Nursing, it's going to open so many doors for not just me, for us. Like, come on, you're not tired of being like in poverty stricken? Let's get our lives together, and this is our way." But he didn't want to hear that. So I tried to slip outside, and he grabbed me by my throat, slid me up the wall, and body slammed me on the cement. And like you say, this is a big guy. He's 6 foot tall, 250 pounds, and I'm 5'2", like 140, and thankfully the neighbors saw and they called the campus police. And I made up my mind, like, man, I'm never going through this again. I have a choice. I'm not choosing this.
Yeah.
So all the work that I had been doing in therapy and that program, I was able to apply it right then and there. And it was easier because he was being removed and being, there were consequences for his actions.
Yeah.
And I had gone to class the next day, and one of my instructors, I learned at that moment, she was teaching on intimate partner violence and how we spot it in our patients. And I was one of these students where I'm in the front of class, I want to get all the, the juice, and I'm all engaged and everything. But this day I sat in the back of class and I was just feeling like crap, but I'm like, I gotta show up, I gotta keep going. And and she noticed something was off, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." And then, her being a nurse, she looked at me a little bit closer, and she's like, "You have petechiae in your eye. Were you strangled?" And I'm like, "How did you know?" She was able to pick up on that. But she called me to her office, and that was the very first time I was able to use my voice, because she listened to me and she recognized what I was going through based on her, her specialized training, and her skill set, but also her experience with intimate partner violence. And I didn't know what a term before, so she pointed me in the right direction. I went to get examined. We had a student health center on campus. So I went there to make sure that I wasn't bleeding internally, because you'll never know if it's internal, right? And I didn't have any bruising on the outside of my neck, so I would have never known. You know what I'm saying? So I went and got checked out there, and they cleared me. And then she brought me to the Family Justice Center, where I got the restraining order that I needed. It's like I felt so free.
Yeah.
I felt so free, and free to not only just be free from abuse, but like, I've got my life back. But who am I? Because I was with him for so long. Like, I gotta figure out my life out. Like, I gotta figure out who I am, and I'm a mom, and I'm a single mom now. Like, things are different. And it was difficult to navigate those areas. But saying all of that to say, like, through my experience with culture, and me being conditioned to be quiet because nobody's gonna listen anyway. If the one time when I needed somebody the most, I'm penalized for asking for help, and then the liberating feeling, the freedom that came with telling one person, and that one person believing me and listening to me, and basically grabbing my hand and saying, "You're gonna be okay. I got you. There are so many resources that you didn't, that you have access to that you didn't even know about, and it's crazy. This was back in 2016, 2017, and that lady still checks on me to this day. She's still in touch with me to this day.
That's amazing. That's
Yep.
amazing. You got a friend out of it and a mentor.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's
Awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you got out of it. You're a strong woman, and I can see that. And definitely positive energy, so I can see that healing era has come, even though
Yes.
it takes a while, but that's amazing.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Michelle, you want to get to the next one?
Yeah, I sure do. So, how can cultural competence in social services and law enforcement improve the support offered to survivors from diverse backgrounds?
Well, understanding that, for one, domestic violence comes in many shapes, forms, sizes. It looks different for everybody. People are going through different things, right? It's not just physical, it's not just financial or sexual, it's in a variety of different ways. It's narcissism, it's the mental abuse, it's there's so many different facets of it. And also, everybody doesn't look like what they've been through, right? Um, when I would share my story with like people, that would know me or whatever, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I would have never known. You look nothing like what you've been through." And I'm like, "What exactly does abuse look like on a person? What do you think of abuse when you hear domestic violence? What is your perception on it?" And it's important to bring awareness to it because it looks like you and me. And yes, there are severe cases where there's bruising, there's bleeding, there's all the outward physical appearance, but it looks like an everyday person.
Yep.
So understanding those things, that it looks different for each person involved, it's not the same, and educating ourselves on that. A lot of times my abuser, this is so funny, this is comical, it's so pathetic, it's comical. He had like tried to he had broken into my apartment on campus, and he had thrown a rock into my windshield of my car, and he just did a whole bunch of stuff. So when he realized that I'm not playing with you. Like, and this is after he's got arrested and all this stuff. Like, he didn't care. All he cared about was getting back at me because he got in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Because he knew that I needed my family while, he was away, because I didn't have any other like support besides him, at the time. So obviously I would turn to my family, and like, the village, my village, I like to say I built my village everywhere I go. So in my support system, he knew that I would try to turn to them, for help with my children because they were super young at the time.
Hmm.
What he did was he called all of my family members, from my brother, my sister, my dad, like everybody that I would possibly turn to, and say that I set him up, or I did this to him. I pushed him. And I'm like, this is crazy. So everybody's calling me like, Kiara, how dare you portray him like that? Why would you do this to him? This is your family. It's the father of your kids. And I'm like, do you hear what you're saying right now?
Yeah.
What? Like, okay, did he tell you what he did? And this is why I didn't turn to my family, because they would accuse me of what he did. So I found, solace and support in strangers,
Strangers.
but understanding that, domestic violence is serious. And I had a friend recently back in August. And I remember when I met her, back in 2012, she was married to this guy, and they had, kids together and everything. And we were talking about domestic violence. And it's crazy because I was going through mental abuse and didn't realize it, but she was going through it physically. And she was saying that, she wanted to leave her husband, but every time that she tried to do it, he told her that he was going to kill her. And she's like, I believe him, so I stay, right? Well, I found out earlier this year, back in August, that he had filed for divorce from her, and he had continued to make these threats. He left her, right? She was moved on with her life and whatever, and he still killed her.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
So it's like understanding that this is nothing to play with. It's dangerous. What I tell people, I have a mentorship program too, where I walk, people through in real life, like through these steps of like the SMART goals. Like, I apply it and I implement it in my mentorship program. So what I tell my survivors slash future thrivers is that you believe him the first time. If they say that they're going to do something, take that serious. And,
Mhm.
you figure out a way to be safe, to get away from that, because you believe that, and it may start off in the smallest ways. It may start off with just physical, or excuse me, mental abuse or emotional abuse, or it may start off where it's not dangerous, where you don't feel, harm being inflicted, but it's coming. He's building to that, because the more you tolerate, the more he feels like he can get away with, until you no longer are here.
Yeah.
So it's important for people, any one of us, to listen, and to, if someone's talking about like a situation, or they feel like, oh, don't post any pictures of me or whatever. You never know what anybody's going through. You never know, what people are going through behind closed doors, because again, it looks like any one of us, right? We would, and there's shame associated with being a victim, and you feel guilt and all of that. So it's just giving an like active listening, an open heart, an open mind. And a lot of times people aren't ready to actually make that step. People aren't ready to, to move, and they may know. I knew this is not what I wanted, but I had no idea how I was going to get out of that situation. And it took, for my back being up against the wall, for me to say, I'm done. I'm done. It took for it to be a life or death situation where he could have killed me, so understanding the severity of this, abuse, and listening, and just respecting where people are, and not judging them, but also providing resources. The National Domestic Violence Hotline. I'm coming out with little keychains, that has my logo on it, Empower You, because I really want women to find the strength within themselves and understand that they have the tools within to actually like empower themselves to make a decision and to choose and lead the life that they want to live. And on the back of the keychain, it has the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and access to my website and all of those things. So, but it's a passion of mine, because not only did I survive and thrive, but I know people that aren't here today because, they didn't act, or they didn't take it serious, or, it was the first time and they didn't see it coming. This is not the person that they first met. They changed overnight in the snap of a finger. So, yeah.
Thank you. Michelle,
Yeah.
up for the
No,
next one.
that was great.
It
Okay.
was unbelievable.
Okay, you're up, Sean.
This is incredible. I mean, just incredible. Okay, here we go. Next one. Are there cultural practices or traditions that might inadvertently perpetuate domestic violence? And if so, how can these be addressed without disrespecting cultural heritage?
Well, I feel like we all come from, a cultural background, areas of our lives that we love and we hold so very dear to us. Um, and there are different religions. Like, I identified with being an African American woman, but I also knew that the culture, the community that I had, that I belonged to in the church growing up, that was my mom's culture. Like, that's her whole life, and with respect, um, there were so many different things that I witnessed, or even, caught wind of, um, growing up, that weren't going on in the church, that were just swept under the rug, and things in our house, in my culture. When my mom found out that I started talking about domestic violence, she was so embarrassed, and she felt guilty, because she felt like she was responsible for some of the things that I had gone through, because I witnessed it. But she also felt ashamed for not making decisions to protect me when I was sexually abused. And one of the things that she said when she found out that I was speaking out about it, is, why would you tell anybody? I would have taken that to my grave, you know. And I had to get her to understand, Mom, with all the love and respect in this world, this is my story to tell. It's my life.
Great. Wow.
I went through this. I survived this.
Yeah.
By the hardest. And I'm thriving today.
Thank you.
because I spoke out about it. And there are so many other women that are younger than me, young like me when I first started going through domestic violence at 18 years old, that can identify with that. It's not about me. It's not about me at all.
Mhm.
And I knew that when I decided to become a nurse, I knew that it was bigger than me. So I knew that it would be the key to unlock so many doors, and it would give me the credibility to speak out about these things that I'm very passionate about, with mental illnesses, trauma related to domestic violence, PTSDs and just other things. But I knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to, impact the world, So yes, it's my story and I survived it, but it's about those people that didn't survive. It's about those women that are, suffering in silence. It's about those people that honestly just don't know where to begin. And those kids, the kids that are seeing it, that are terrified because they can hear the screams and they're worried that mom is not going to make it, or that daddy's going to hurt mom, or the other way around, mom is going to kill dad. It's about everybody else that is going to benefit through not only my platform, my story, but my voice. So
Yeah.
yes, having courage and working on myself and my healing journey. I still see a therapist to this day, and I love her so much. And not just when things are bad, but when things are great. For maintenance, like
Exactly.
I have an unbiased person that I know is in my corner that's going to celebrate my victories with me because I overcame a milestone today. I reached a milestone. I changed. I stayed firm in my boundaries and my belief, and she's going to celebrate that. I may not get the same response that I need, from family members or close friends or whatever, but my therapist got me, and I know I can trust her. That's a safe space, and that's been established, you
Great.
know? So normalizing psychotherapies and desensitizing that stigma around having mental illnesses and trauma related to domestic violence, it's perfectly fine, to seek
Kiara.
out resources,
Yeah, Kiara, that's some fire. What you just said. That's some fire. How about your
Yes,
therapist? Because I have a therapist for PTSD, so
I
it's a
love
safe.
it.
It's a safe place.
Absolutely.
We
And I
need it.
feel like when I go, I turn my phones off. I take my watch off because I don't want to be bothered. I take my shoes off. I get comfortable. This is my second bedroom for this hour. I'm home. I feel
It's great.
good, you know?
It's like almost like just being refreshed to a life and what's
Yes,
going on without you, and it inspires you to talk to others. And I've been there, done it. So when you can say I've been there, done it, people listen.
right.
People listen.
And I like to tell people I'm a country girl from the South, central Louisiana,
Deep
you know,
South.
the deep South. Well, we make Tabasco. That's my hometown. you know and i'm I'm just like anyone else who had a desire to have a better life, to
Yeah.
change my life, to rewrite my story, to control the narrative, to take control and say I have the pen now. My life is going to be what I want it to be, not anyone else. And I'm here today because of perseverance and self-motivation and a lot of prayers, and my village, you
I
know
like that. My village. That's
So,
awesome.
I
yes,
love it. And that
You
leads us to our last question.
of
In,
the night. Yeah.
in what ways can communities or villages balance respecting cultural values while ensuring the safety and well-being of survivors of domestic violence?
I feel like, in based on my experiences, just being present, just listening in a non-judgmental way, hearing what someone says, but not just hearing them, validating what they're saying and believing them and offering support. A lot of people want to say, you need to leave, you need to, but they're not in a situation. They have no idea.
Yep.
They can barely relate. But a lot of people speak out of love too, and it's frustrating because they want to help you. And why don't you see it? you know, just what was pivotal for me was when my instructor was like, "You're safe now. It's okay. You are okay." So listening in an unbiased and non-judgmental way and offering support, whether it be a listening ear or, I had a homegirl that said, "Oh my God, you called me so many times saying that you're done with this person and you're sick of what you're going through and all these other things. And it's like you're crying wolf." And it's like, it's a process. It's a
Yeah.
mindset shift. It took me 8 years to shift my mindset. And I knew every single day that I was sick and tired of that life, but it took 8 years for me to say, I am not that person anymore. I'm not a doormat. You're going to respect me. You're going to call me by my first name. My mom named me Kiara Bryant. That is who I am, and that's what you're going to address me as. And I'm not settling for anything less than everything that I know I deserve.
Go,
You know,
girl.
so
You go, girl.
but
You
like
go.
setting those boundaries, and whenever everybody's like, "Oh, I'm firm on my boundaries. I'm sticking to this. I'm not gonna do this one, this, that, and the other." But they get tested in those moments where opportunities present themselves, and the people that we love challenge them. It's like, no, I said what I said, and I meant that the first time, and because of that, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna respect me, but it's a mindset shift. It really is, and it's applying the things that you've learned, but it's also my village. Like my people held me down, and they still do. I thank God for the people in my life, because they champion the things that I'm doing and they applaud what I'm doing. So yeah, I think that the way to respect cultures and domestic violence, people that are going through domestic violence in different cultures without being judgmental or disrespectful, is being present, active listening, and being supportive in whatever way that the person that's going through domestic violence needs support. We want to give support that the way that we feel like it's best. That's not what everybody needs. It's the same thing with love. Everybody doesn't receive love. Gift giving doesn't mean love to me. Thank you for the gift. It's a gift. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
the same way in support. It's you know, so I feel like just being present and listening with love,
And
being
yeah,
unbiased.
being present in the now
Yes,
Yeah.
and
right now.
reflecting in the now from the past to help those that are in need. That's what
Yep.
works for me.
Love it. Love it. Great answers. We have loved having you today. So tell our audience again the name of your book, where they can find it, where they can follow you.
So it'll be everywhere on my platform. So on Instagram and Facebook, I my handle is Kiara Bryant, Kiara_Bryant on Instagram and on TikTok. Facebook is Kiara Bryant. And my book is called Empower You: The Biggest Secret to Your Next Level Life. And it will be on Amazon, but it'll also be listed on my website and on my social media pages. There'll be a link there, and it's soon to come in March. So
Well, I'm telling you, I want a signed copy.
I got you. I got you.
We'll really love that. We can't wait to see the book and read the book. So that's awesome. So thank you so much for being on the show. You're such a breath of what survivors of domestic violence need in this world right now.
Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we look forward to talking with you again in the future. And like Sean said, we can't wait to read the book. And again, just thank you for helping us understand, different cultural, beliefs and things that happen that we may not understand because we may be in our own way or,
Right.
talkative or, keeping in the house may be different for us or women not being
Right.
heard or, vice versa, men not being heard. So we appreciate you and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank
And
you
Kiera, in
for having
closing, I
me.
just want to say keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. And I'm not saying don't look back, but and not to forget, but just move forward and help as many people as you can. And your movement is going to become something bigger and better. I see it. I feel it. And I see it. So, you know, don't even look in that rearview mirror, honey. Just go. Spread your
Thank
wings
you.
like you're doing and just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, some big things coming up in 2025, so I'm ready. And I'm
Well, thank
excited.
you so much for blessing our podcast with your presence, because you definitely made a difference for us, all of us. There's like 40 different volunteers. There's like 17 directors. They're all going to see your episode. And I'm telling you, you really made a difference for me and Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, let me know how I can help to volunteer at, the
Absolutely.
nonprofit.
So
Please.
send
I would love
send
that.
all the information to Michelle, and she'll get it to me, and we'll have a meeting. We'll appoint you.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence, Inc. We hope this discussion has provided you with valuable insights into how domestic violence is viewed and addressed across different cultures. As we've learned today, cultural perspectives can significantly impact both the experience of survivors and the support systems available to them.
Yes, Michelle, it's so important that we create a more inclusive and culturally aware approach to supporting survivors. No matter the background, everyone deserves safety, dignity, and the chance to heal. If you or someone you know is in need of help, be sure to check out the resources in the show notes, where you can find support tailored to different cultural needs.
Remember, there's always support available, and you are not alone in your journey. Keep sharing these important conversations, and together we can create a world where all survivors feel seen, heard, and supported.
Take care, stay strong, and we'll be back with more conversations that matter. Until next time.